praying for clarity, haven't you? Crying in secret, trying to figure out why the very people who say they love you seem to always bring you pain. You've been walking around with your heart wide open, giving your best and still feeling unseen, unheard, unappreciated. I know what it's like to look into the eyes of someone who says they care and feel something dark moving beneath the surface. I know what it's like to sit at a dinner table with people who share your blood but don't carry your spirit. And you're not crazy, you're not too sensitive, you're not overreacting. What you're feeling is real. It's not about hatred or bitterness. It's about spiritual discernment. There's things moving behind the scenes that your natural eyes can't see, but your spirit can sense. You're not just feeling tension, you're feeling spiritual warfare. You're not just navigating toxic traits, you're confronting generational spirits trying to cling to your future. Let's be honest, some demons don't come in the form of nightmares. Some come in the form of childhood friends, cousins, even parents. They don't all scream. Some of them whisper just enough doubt to keep you second-guessing your purpose. Some of them love you just enough to keep you from walking away, but hurt you just enough to keep you from soaring. That's how they work. Subtle, close, comfortable. You ever notice how drained you feel after spending time with certain people? You started the day full of joy, full of hope, full of plans, but one phone call, one text, one visit, and now your mood is low, your confidence shaking, your peace gone. That's not just emotional, that's spiritual. That's your spirit alerting you that something is off. But instead of protecting ourselves, we silence that voice with guilt. We tell ourselves, but that's my family, that's my friend from way back. And meanwhile, we stay spiritually sick from soul ties we never should have kept. I need you to understand something. The enemy doesn't need to send strangers when he can use people close to you. The ones who know your fears, the ones who know your weaknesses, the ones who've seen you broken and try to keep you in that place. Because if you ever truly healed, if you ever truly believed in who you are, if you ever really started walking in your purpose, they'd lose control, and demons hate to lose control. Look at the patterns, not the apologies, not the promises, the patterns. The same way they gaslight you, twist the truth, disappear when you need support, but show up with criticism when you succeed. The same people who make your wins feel small and your wounds feel deserved. That's not love. That's spiritual sabotage. And here's what makes it hard. It's not always intentional. Sometimes they don't even know they're being used. Sometimes the same brokenness that hurt them is speaking through them. But just because they're not aware doesn't mean you shouldn't be. Just because they don't know doesn't mean you don't see. You've got to stop giving your peace to people who refuse to do their own healing. Stop trying to justify what your spirit is trying to reject. You don't have to make excuses for someone God is exposing. You don't have to keep entertaining conversations that stir up anxiety in your soul. And you certainly don't have to keep proving yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. That's not your assignment. Listen, healing requires boundaries, peace requires separation, and sometimes love looks like distance. Sometimes honoring God means disappointing people. It means recognizing when a spirit is attached to someone you love and still choosing obedience over comfort. That's grown woman warfare. That's how you protect the oil on your life. You were born to break cycles, not stay stuck in them. And that means you're going to have to walk away from some familiar dysfunction. You can't cast out what you're still cuddling. You can't be free while clinging to the very chains God is trying to remove. Let him do the work. Let him prune, reveal, remove. He knows what's hiding behind the smile. He sees what you don't. Trust him. It's not about being paranoid, it's about being aware. When your spirit gets unsettled, don't just push it aside. Ask God, what is this? Show me what I'm dealing with, because everything that looks like love isn't safe. Everything that sounds like encouragement isn't holy. There are people who will cheer you on just loud enough to stay close, but quiet enough to never push you forward. That's not partnership. You need people around you who know how to cover you in prayer, not gossip. People who won't weaponize your vulnerability. People who celebrate your growth even when it surpasses theirs. And if that's not what you're surrounded by, you've got a decision to make. Because what you allow around you will either feed your faith or fuel your fears. It's okay to let go. I know it hurts. I know it feels like betrayal, but what if the real betrayal is choosing them over your calling? What if the real danger is pretending everything is okay while your soul is screaming, God is calling you higher, but you can't climb while dragging dead weight? Let go of the hand that keeps pulling you back. Let go of the voice that keeps planting doubt. Let go of the guilt that says you owe people access to a healed version of you when they only supported the broken version. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe anyone your anointing. You don't have to apologize for the boundaries God is teaching you to build. That's growth. That's wisdom. That's survival. Because some of the battles you're fighting aren't about right or wrong. They're about light and darkness, and just shines. So shine, even if it makes them uncomfortable. Shine, even if it means sitting alone for a while. Shine, even when the ones you love don't understand. Because your healing is not up for negotiation. Your freedom is not up for debate. And your destiny is too important to be delayed by demons hiding behind familiar faces. This is not the time to be timid. Not the time to keep tolerating spirits that war against your peace. This is the time to rise, to discern, to move boldly, because the assignment on your life is bigger than their comfort, bigger than the old loyalty, bigger than the pain of letting go. You've been called, and the call requires courage. But you were never called to follow feelings. You were called to walk in truth. And truth requires discernment. Discernment is that spiritual sensitivity that lets you know when something looks right but feels wrong. It's that nudge that tells you they're saying the right things but something's off. It's the warning that rises up before the betrayal ever happens. But the problem is, too many of us ignore it. We trade discernment for loyalty. We silence our inner knowing because we're afraid of what it might cost us. You can't let comfort blind you to chaos. Some people are comfortable around you because you haven't changed yet. Because you still tolerate what God is trying to free you from. Because you still laugh at the same broken jokes, stay quiet around the same toxic behaviors, and keep showing up even when your soul is exhausted. That's not peace. That's compromise, and compromise will keep you stuck while calling it love. When God gives you discernment, it's not to make you suspicious, it's to make you safe. It's not about being judgmental, it's about being wise. You're not judging them, you're just recognizing the fruit. And fruit doesn't lie. You can say all the right things, but if your presence consistently brings confusion, heaviness, gossip, manipulation, or jealousy, then I know what spirit is operating behind you. And when discernment shows up, I have to honor it, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's painful, even when it challenges everything I thought I knew about someone I care for. This is where many people get stuck. Because the truth is, it's easier to pretend we don't see it. It's easier to keep the peace by ignoring the spiritual unrest. But at what cost? Your destiny is too precious to keep surrendering it to familiar spirits disguised as friends or family. And no, it doesn't always mean they're evil or hateful. Sometimes they're just not assigned to where you're going. Sometimes they're still attached to old patterns you've been delivered from. And that mismatch creates friction. That tension you feel is your spirit trying to tell you this isn't aligned anymore. This isn't aligned anymore. You can't build a healed future while tethered to unhealed people who refuse to grow. Discernment helps you navigate that. It helps you love people without letting them lead you. It teaches you how to set boundaries without bitterness. Because you're not better than them, but you are different. And that difference has to be protected. Not because you're prideful, but because you're called, because you've been trusted with something holy. And holy things cannot live in contaminated environments. Familiarity makes it hard to walk away, but discernment helps you walk away with peace, knowing that you're not abandoning people, you're aligning with God. You're not rejecting anyone, you're responding to truth. And the truth is, not everyone who started with you can finish with you. Not everyone who clapped for your brokenness can handle your healing. And that's okay. Discernment over familiarity. That's how you stay free. That's how you stay covered. That's how you stop confusing loyalty with spiritual compromise. When you start honoring what your spirit knows, you'll stop settling for what your emotions crave. And that's when real transformation begins. It's easy to get caught up in words, apologies, promises, the sweet talk that sounds like growth but lacks the substance to back it up. We've all been there, giving someone another chance because they said all the right things, because they cried, because they seemed sincere. But let me tell you something, growth isn't proven in what someone says, it's proven in what they do consistently. You can't measure transformation by emotion, you measure it by pattern. Patterns are the rhythm of someone's true character. They're the trail that follows every decision, every action, every response. You can fake an apology, but you can't fake a pattern. If someone constantly wounds you, then apologizes only to wound you again. That's not repentance, that's a cycle. And cycles don't break until someone decides to break them. Until then, you'll stay spinning in the same circle of disappointment, hoping the next apology will be different. You have to stop confusing remorse with change. Remorse says, I feel bad. Change says, I'm doing better. And when you really want to walk in freedom, you have to stop giving more weight to the apology than you do to the pattern. It's the pattern that tells you who someone really is. It's the pattern that reveals their heart posture, their boundaries, their respect or lack of it for your boundaries. People will tell you what they think you want to hear, especially when they sense that they're about to lose access to you. But when someone truly values you, it won't just show up in their words, it'll show up in their consistency, in their actions, in their effort. You won't have to keep asking them to treat you right. You won't have to keep explaining the same boundaries over and over, because someone who respects your presence won't keep testing your absence. And let's be honest, some of us stay in toxic situations because we're addicted to potential. We're in love with who they could be, who they might be. But while you're clinging to potential, the pattern is screaming, this is who they really are right now. You're praying for God to change someone who hasn't even made the choice to change themselves. You're waiting for fruit to grow where the soil hasn't even been tilled. And in doing so, you're delaying your own healing. You can forgive someone and still acknowledge that their pattern is unhealthy. You can love someone and still recognize that they're not safe for your spirit. That's not bitterness, that's wisdom. That's discernment, that's maturity. And it takes courage to look at someone you care about and say, I believe your words, but your pattern doesn't support them. And I can't stay in a space where the behavior contradicts the apology. Patterns don't lie, they expose, they clarify, and they protect. If you're willing to pay attention, you don't need another emotional moment. You need a spiritual decision. A decision to no longer compromise with inconsistency. A decision to honor the version of you that's been growing, healing, and rising out of old cycles. Because if you keep excusing the pattern, you'll keep enabling it. And what you tolerate, you teach people to repeat. Look at the fruit. Look at how they treat you when they're angry. Look at what they say when they're not getting their way. Look at how they respond when you set a boundary. That's where the truth lives, not in the apology after the damage is done, but in the behavior that comes after the apology has been made. Change doesn't need an announcement, at least consistency, and healing doesn't require perfect people, but it does require honest patterns. So stop letting "I'm sorry" be enough. Let "I've changed" be proven. Let actions speak. Let history be your teacher, not to make you bitter, but to make you wiser. Because your peace is too valuable to keep giving it to patterns that never grow. So many blessings are waiting on the other side of peace, clarity, creativity, wholeness, but you'll never access them if your mind is always crowded and your heart is always heavy. So let them call you distant. Let them say you've changed. Let them be uncomfortable with your calm. That's not your burden. Your only assignment is to guard what God is doing in you and around you. Because when you protect your peace, you protect your purpose. There comes a time when you have to stop apologizing for choosing peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from silence or surrender, but the kind of peace that is fought for, prayed over, and protected with intention. Because real peace is not passive, it's a boundary, it's a decision, it's a spiritual defense. And once you start understanding that your peace is connected to your purpose, you stop letting just anyone have access to your atmosphere. You can't carry peace and chaos in the same space. One will always override the other, and for far too long you've been trying to balance both. Trying to be the fixer, the listener, the rescuer, the emotional sponge for everyone else's drama while silently losing yourself. But God never calls you to be the sacrifice for someone else's dysfunction. He calls you to steward the stillness that allows you to hear his voice clearly. And that can't happen when you're surrounded by noise. There's a difference between loving someone and allowing them to violate your peace. There's a difference between being supportive and being spiritually smothered. And the moment you feel like you have to shrink, overextend, or constantly explain yourself just to maintain your relationship, that's not peace. That's performance. And performing will exhaust you. It will strip you of your identity and leave you spiritually bankrupt while other people feed off your strength. You have to start asking yourself, does this conversation bring me clarity or does it leave me confused? Does this relationship feed my growth or does it deplete me? Does their presence ignite peace or provoke anxiety? Because your answers to those questions will reveal who is truly for you and who just benefits from your lack of boundaries. Some people don't want peace, they want access. They want your energy. They want your attention. And when you stop giving them that, they'll label you as cold, as distant, as selfish. But that's only because you stopped being available for their chaos. They were never invested in your peace, only in what they could take from you without giving anything back. And you've tried, haven't you? You've tried to reason with them, to communicate better, to give more chances. But the truth is, protecting your peace isn't about getting others to understand. It's about honoring what your spirit already knows. You're not required to stay in environments that suffocate you just to prove you care. That's not loyalty, that's self-abandonment. Peace isn't just quiet, it's sacred ground. And when you start treating it like something holy, you stop letting unhealed people come in and trample it. You stop explaining your boundaries and start enforcing them. You stop feeling guilty for creating distance and start feeling empowered by it. Because peace isn't the absence of people, it's the presence of alignment. And you can't stay aligned while entertaining spirits that pull you out of character and off course. Some of the most spiritual things you'll ever do will look like walking away, like saying no, like choosing not to engage in every argument or show up to every event. Not because you don't care, but because you care about your own well-being too. And that's not weakness, that's wisdom. When you protect your peace, you protect your mind, you protect your clarity, you create room for joy, and more importantly, you create space for God to speak, to heal, and to move. So stop feeling bad for putting peace first. Peace is not a privilege, it's your responsibility. It's a soil where purpose grows, where vision takes root, and where healing finally has room to bloom. Sometimes the battle isn't as loud as you think. It doesn't always come with yelling or blatant attack or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes the enemy works in the quiet places, using the people closest to you to stir up confusion, doubt, and chaos. These are the battles that are harder to spot. You might not hear the enemy's voice directly, but you'll feel it through manipulation, gossip, and emotional upheaval. These battles are sneaky, subtle, and often camouflaged as normal everyday interaction. When you start to discern that something is wrong, don't dismiss it. If you feel uneasy around certain people, if every interaction feels like a spiritual tug of war, don't ignore that feeling. You've been given spiritual discernment for a reason. Your heart can sense what your eyes can't always see. It can detect when something feels off, even when everything appears perfect on the surface. These quiet battles often manifest in ways that seem trivial at first, like a friend who always makes jokes at your expense, or a family member who constantly undermines your decisions with passive-aggressive comments. At first, these things may seem small, even funny, but the enemy doesn't need to be loud to be effective. He only needs to get you off track. People who harbor jealousy, insecurity, or negativity may not always scream or fight, but they will subtly poison your environment. They'll begin planting seeds of doubt about your ability, your worth, your future, and watch them grow in the fertile soil of your emotions. They won't necessarily tell you to your face that they're working against you, but they'll find ways to weaken your resolve by chipping away at your confidence, piece by piece. And the more you ignore these signs, the more you allow those spirits of division to take root in your life. When you discern that someone in your circle is influenced by negative spirits, it's not about labeling them as bad or evil. It's about understanding that they are a vessel being used by something greater than themselves. That's why it's critical to protect your peace, because if you don't, you'll start fighting battles that are not even your own. You get caught up in confusion, miscommunication, and emotional turmoil, believing that the problem is with you when it's actually a spiritual attack you're being led into. And this is where wisdom comes in. When you sense spiritual warfare around you, the solution is not always to engage, confront, or fix things. Sometimes the answer is to retreat. Sometimes the answer is to pull away from people who stir up strife and confusion in your life. You don't need to fight every battle. Some battles are won simply by choosing not to participate. You don't need to argue your worth or defend your peace against people who can't even see the value in it. When the enemy uses others to attack you, your response is not to fight fire with fire, but to stand firm in your knowledge of who you are and whose you are. The enemy loves to use familiar faces of people closest to you because they know where to hit. They know your triggers, your weaknesses, your blind spots. And if you don't recognize this as spiritual warfare, you'll spend years in toxic cycles, repeating the same arguments, the same misunderstandings, the same feelings of rejection and abandonment. You'll think it's personal, but really it's just an attack on your spirit. It's an attack on your peace, on your purpose, and on your ability to walk in the fullness of God's plan for your life. It's important to know that spiritual warfare can't be won through your own strength. It requires the Holy Spirit to guide your steps, to show you when to move and when to be still, when to speak and when to be silent. It requires discernment to see through the false facades, to understand the underlying motives of those who might not even realize they are being influenced. And ultimately, it requires trust in God's plan, knowing that He's already gone ahead of you, equipping you for the battle before it even begins. The closer you get to your purpose, the more spiritual attacks you'll face. But you don't have to fear them. You don't have to shrink back. When you recognize the enemy's tactics, you can expose them. When you can spot spiritual warfare, you can pray strategically. And when you choose to walk in your identity in Christ, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Letting go is not an easy task. In fact, it can feel like the hardest thing you'll ever do. But in order to fully step into the future that's waiting for you, sometimes you have to release what's holding you back. Letting go doesn't always mean cutting people out of your life entirely, though it might. It doesn't always mean severing relationships, though it can. It simply means releasing the grip that these relationships or situations have on your spirit. You're not abandoning people, you're choosing to no longer allow their influence to determine your path. When you're walking in your purpose, there will be moments when God will require you to step away from things that no longer align with His plan for your life. This could be a toxic friendship that constantly pulls you into drama, or a family dynamic that drains your energy without offering any support. It could even be habits, mindsets, or places you keep returning to, even though they lead you back to the same spiritual exhaustion. What makes letting go so difficult is the emotional attachment we have to the situation. The comfort of familiarity is often enough to keep us holding on long after it's time to let go. But the reality is, staying connected to the wrong people or places can prevent you from receiving the full blessing of what God has for you next. When you are obedient to what God is showing you, it may involve separation. It may require stepping away from the familiar so that you can step into the unknown. God doesn't want you tethered to things that limit you or keep you stuck in cycles of unhealed behavior. If you've been hurt by the same people repeatedly or drained by the same relationships, it's time to recognize that your growth is being stunted by your attachment to these unhealthy dynamics. Letting go doesn't just apply to people, it also applies to old versions of yourself. It means releasing the patterns and thought processes that have held you captive for so long. There are thoughts and habits you've developed that no longer serve you, but they've become so familiar that you've allowed them to shape your identity. You've believed the lies that you're not worthy of better, that you don't deserve peace, that you're stuck in this situation forever. Letting go means changing your mindset, breaking the chains of doubt and fear that have kept you tied to your past. It means freeing yourself from the belief that the only life you can have is the one you've always known. But how do you know when it's time to let go? The answer lies in peace. When something or someone consistently disrupts your peace, it's a sign that it's time to reconsider its place in your life. God's peace isn't about the absence of conflict or discomfort, but it is a sense of security in the midst of it. It's the stillness assures you that everything is going to be okay, even when circumstances seem to suggest otherwise. If you're constantly in turmoil, questioning yourself, battling negative emotions, or feeling drained after every interaction, you've outgrown it. The spiritual discomfort is a wake-up call. It's God's way of showing you that you are no longer aligned with what's around you. It's also important to understand that letting go is not a sign of failure, it's a sign of maturity. The ability to recognize when something is no longer serving its purpose in your life is not weakness, but wisdom. Holding on to people or situations that don't align with your future is what keeps you stuck. Letting go of the familiar takes courage because it often feels like you're stepping into an unknown void, but God has already prepared that space for you. There's something new waiting for you on the other side of your obedience. We are often afraid of change because we fear the unknown, but change is the key to growth. Letting go allows you to make room for the new things that God wants to bring into your life. Every time you release something or someone that's holding you back, you open yourself up to new possibilities. And these possibilities aren't just about new opportunities. They're about new versions of yourself that you haven't even met yet. When you let go of what no longer fits into your life, you give yourself permission to become who God created you to be. Letting go also means trusting that God will fill the empty space with what you need. It's not about leaving an empty void in your life. It's about allowing God to fill it with His peace, His purpose, and His plan for your future. When you let go, you surrender control. You trust that God is not taking something from you, but making room for something better. And sometimes what's better is not what you expect. It's far better than you could have imagined because it's aligned with God's perfect will for you. But when God calls you to release something or someone, don't hesitate. Don't hold on longer than you need to. Trust that He knows what He's doing and that your obedience will lead you into greater freedom and fulfillment. Letting go might be the hardest thing you've ever done, but it will also be the most freeing. Because only when you let go can you fully embrace what God is preparing for you. Sometimes the hardest part of moving forward is realizing that not everyone in your life is going to be part of the next chapter, and that's okay. We often hold on to relationships out of loyalty, out of love, or even out of fear of what life will look like without them. But the truth is, some people were meant for a season, not for a lifetime. And when you understand this, you'll start to see that releasing people who aren't meant to be in your future isn't an act of abandonment. It's an act of faith. It's trusting that God has people, places, and opportunities that are better aligned with where He's taking you. One of the hardest things about spotting the demons in family and friends is acknowledging that not every person who has been part of your journey will make it to the destination. The hardest part of this realization is the emotional attachment you have to them. You've shared memories, experiences, and moments of joy together, but sometimes the attachment isn't enough to keep them in your life. Their behavior, their energy, or their actions don't match the values and vision that God is calling you to walk in. And while you may have deep love and affection for them, love doesn't always mean staying connected. When you see that a relationship or connection is hindering your growth, it's important to pause and assess why that is. Are they draining your energy? Are they encouraging your spiritual progress? Or do they keep pulling you back into unhealthy cycles? Are they constantly manipulating situations to control you or use your kindness against you? These are the signs of unhealthy relationships that can sometimes masquerade as genuine connection. You don't always realize it because you're emotionally invested and it's hard to see the patterns when you're in the midst of them. But once you begin to discern that something is off, it's time to take action. 90. Letting go doesn't mean you stop caring or stop loving these people. It doesn't mean you're angry or bitter. It just means that you're choosing your peace over the chaos they may bring into your life. It means that you're valuing your growth more than your past connection with them. And sometimes this means walking away from relationships that no longer serve you, not just for your benefit, but for theirs as well. Because sometimes people need to learn how to grow on their own. Sometimes they need space to deal with their issues, and you can't always be the one to help them through it. You can't carry their weight forever. You have to be honest with yourself about who and what is truly supporting your growth. Your peace is invaluable, and it's critical to protect it at all costs. When you let go of relationships that drain you, you're making space for people who will encourage you, inspire you, and help you move forward. You're not abandoning anyone. You're just acknowledging that the relationship no longer aligns with the person you're becoming. You're acknowledging that you can love someone from a distance and still honor your own journey. As you continue to move forward, remember that peace is your inheritance. It's not a luxury. It's essential for your spiritual well-being and growth. Protect it fiercely. Trust in the wisdom that God has given you to discern what relationships, environments, and habits are elevating you and which ones are holding you back. Know that your journey is yours to walk, and you are not required to carry the weight of others' negativity or chaos. Sometimes you will need to walk away, and that's okay. Sometimes you will need to say no, and that's okay. You are not abandoning anyone. You are simply choosing to honor the calling on your life. You are stepping into a future that is free from the distractions, confusion, and spiritual warfare that have been trying to keep you stuck. When you choose to walk in the fullness of your purpose, you are walking in the freedom God has prepared for you. You are not alone in this journey. God is with you, guiding you and empowering you to rise above. It's time to let go of what holds you back and embrace all that God has prepared for you.